All right, everybody, welcome back to the Horn Takes podcast, your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It's Friday Eve. We've been going on Fridays. We're going to go on Friday Eve today because we got playoff baseball tomorrow in Amarillo, Texas. So I won't be around to do a podcast. We're going to talk about some Texas football today. We're going to talk about some Texas baseball today. Man, what a roller coaster ride that group is. And then we got to talk about it, man. What the hell is going on in Colorado? Like, I've had some good things to say about Coach Prime and the whole Colorado situation. I've had some bad things to say about Prime and the whole Colorado situation. But this stuff that's going on right now, man, is just unbelievable. We'll talk about it in just a little bit. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, you can go to horntakes.buzzsprout.com. You can subscribe there, or basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'll be on Apple Podcasts, be on iHeart, we're on Spotify. So give us a listen. Texas football, not a whole lot of news going on right now. I think probably the biggest news going on right now is the announcement by transfer defensive tackle Dominic Williams out of TCU. He's visited Oklahoma. He's visited Texas. He's visited LSU. He's visited Missouri. It's looking like I don't know, man. Who knows what it's looking like with some of these dudes, but it's kind of looking like it's going to be an OU Texas deal. Just what I've read on the interwebs today, it seems like the LSU folks don't have a lot of faith that they're it. The Missouri kind of got eliminated pretty quick in the process for whatever reason. I don't know. It seems like, at least as of this morning, he's leaning towards OU, but who knows? He just got done with a Baton Rouge visit. On the way back home, he stopped in Austin again. And then rumor is, at least, that he went back up to Oklahoma after he was down at Texas. So I have no idea. Probably a tough decision either. I mean, I don't think it's a tough decision. But I'm sure for these kids, where they're going to go play football for one last year, probably a huge decision. I'm kind of surprised that LSU is just out of it. And again, they may not be, but that's kind of what the word on the street seems to be saying. But with Bo Davis being there, it's kind of interesting that I thought when I saw that he was going to visit LSU, I was pretty concerned about that. But I don't know. Supposedly he's announcing sometime today. As far as I know, it hasn't happened yet. I don't know. We'll just have to see. We talked last week a little bit about our friends over at SEC Unfiltered. Now that Texas is full steam ahead into the SEC, we get included in a lot of we get tagged in a lot of Twitters, a lot of tweets by those guys. And this week I've got tagged in a couple of them. And one of them was best case scenario, worst case scenario for Texas football in 2024. So to me, this is like a way too early. What our thoughts are on 2024. They had Texas best case is 12-0, and this is all regular season. And then worst case 9-3. And so I retweeted it and just kind of put out there, like, what do you guys think? And it had some pretty good discussions. There was one guy that thought, I honestly feel like he's getting worst case scenario, folks, is obviously like the football team just doesn't exist anymore for whatever reason. Or like we have like 11 kids and they have to play both ways, and one of them's a kicker and a punter. And I mean, that's obviously worst case scenario. I don't think anybody on the planet, when they say best case, worst case scenario, really legitimately means the worst case scenario. So this guy had a problem with the 9-3, said he could easily see 6 losses, 5 losses, something like that. And I agree that in a worst case, absolute worst case scenario, the absolute bottom is 0 wins. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting discussion. I personally feel like this team probably ends up 11-1. I could see this team slipping up and losing a second game. I mean, the SEC schedule for Texas in 2024 is not all that tough. If you pull out the Georgia game, that's going to be a doozy. I think both of those teams could wind up playing in Austin undefeated, ranked in the top 5, maybe even 1 and 2 at that point. This one could set up to be a really, really big time game. The type of big time game we haven't seen in Austin in a long time. We've seen some heavy hitters come to Austin, but both teams haven't always been heavy hitters in a very long time. And maybe the last time we've really seen it was 2008 when Missouri came, Oklahoma State came. Both of those teams were, I believe, Missouri was ranked like 3 at the time, I think. Texas was ranked number 1. I think Oklahoma State, when they came in same year, they were ranked in the top 10 for sure, maybe 7, 6, something like that. And then I guess you could harken back to 2006 when Ohio State came to town, but I don't remember exactly what Texas was ranked at that time. But I know my feeling going into that game was not a good one. We were starting a redshirt freshman quarterback. I just not have a good feeling about that one. And that one didn't turn out very great for Texas fans. But anyway, this Georgia-Texas game could be a really big deal, or it could not. You know, Texas has got Oklahoma on the schedule right before the Georgia game. That is a rivalry game, and you can just, folks, we can just toss out what should happen in these rivalry games. There's been too many instances in my lifetime where one team in that rivalry absolutely had no business winning and found a way to win the game. So I don't know what to think about that one. I mean, I think if you look at the rosters, Texas should go win that game. But again, they should have won the game last year if you look at the rosters. So we won't know until that one happens what that one looks like. But then I think, I'm not impressed with what's at Texas A&M, but I think that's going to be a big game on the road at Texas A&M. Haven't played each other since 2011. It's the scene of the crime, so to speak, where Texas was able to pull out a win against an A&M team on their way out of the Big 12. They're going to be jacked for that game. So that, to me, that one could easily be a loss. I mean, I think there's some pitfalls. The schedule doesn't look hard, but I think there's some pitfalls. Maybe even Florida at home. Florida hasn't been great the last couple years, but they've got a lot of talent, and talent can sometimes figure out a way to win games. Worst case, I really feel like 9-3 is probably the worst case. And again, when we say worst case, let's not take that as literal as possible. We're talking everybody's healthy. The team is intact. There's no major scandals. There's no, like just a normal, in a bubble, this team going and playing that schedule, 9-3 is probably the worst case. I agree with that 100%. I agree that, with what SEC Unfiltered had to say about that. And I think most of the comments I saw from Texas fans and non-Texas fans were along those lines. That seems pretty reasonable. Of course, there were some Aggie fans in there that still just like to say things like, "Oh, they've never played an SEC schedule, and they're going to get to. Oh, they're coming from the Big 12. That's terrible. They're going to find out." All that kind of crap. I mean, honestly, I don't disagree that top to bottom, it's probably tougher in the SEC. But I don't think it's that much different. I mean, you're always going to have in every conference, you're always going to have the 2 or 3 sort of top tier teams. And then there's some run of the mill, middle of the road teams that could be good enough and will step up sometimes and beat some of those better teams. And then you got your bottom dwellers. And that's pretty much every conference. The SEC is no different. Maybe you could make the argument that the run-of-the-mill, sort of middle-of-the-road teams in the SEC are stronger than some of the same type teams in other conferences, and I could abide that discussion. But other than that, it's the same type of deal. And the other thing is, Texas went into Alabama last year and beat the SEC champs pretty handily. in their own place. So this whole idea that Texas is just not ready now, and again, this doesn't mean Texas. I mean, Texas could stumble, folks. They could go in first season and just have a rough go of it. I'm not saying anything's guaranteed, and I certainly am not saying there's no doubt 100% this team is going to play for the SEC championship. But I think they're capable, and I don't think it'll have anything to do with going to the SEC. I just that whole mantra is just it's so overplayed and just it's I don't know. It's bullshit is what it is. But anyhow, but that's what we think, and that's way too early. There is obviously a lot of stuff that's going to happen between now and August, and actually, further into October when they actually start playing that SEC schedule. So that's what I think. 12-0 is probably it's not probably 12-0 is attainable. That's best case scenario. Obviously, I mean it's best case for all teams, but I think Texas is actually a team that could pull that off. And I think 9-3 is the floor again, unless something. I mean, the wrong people get hurt at the wrong times, and that could completely change. But you can't. You have to look at it. If you're going to start talking like that, what's the point in even having the discussion? Because we could go to the most ridiculous thing ever and say, yeah, there's no chance. Zero wins is the floor. And if we do that, then how sucky is it during the offseason? We don't have anything to argue about. The other thing that SEC Unfiltered tagged me in was an article they wrote about Quinn Ewers having the hardest job in America. And I skimmed through it. I have a hard time reading like really long stuff. I just have a short attention span. I just can't do it. So I skimmed through it, and basically the gist of this article was, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. However, he's got arguably one of the best, probably the best backup in the country. And I know some people are going to get pissed off about that, but I honestly don't care. I mean, I think Arch he's got to be in the conversation, right? So we'll just say it. He's in the conversation for the best backup in the country, breathing down his neck. And, is it possible that if Quinn Ewers doesn't play well, that Arch could sort of usurp him and all this other stuff? I skimmed it and I thought about it, and what really popped into my mind was not what if Quinn Ewers doesn't play well and then Sark's got to make a decision, and does he make a decision? But really, what if Quinn's playing well, which I think we all expect Quinn Ewers to play well. Unless you're trolling out there on the internet, I think most people are going to say, yeah, he's probably going to play pretty well. He's talented. He's got a lot of talented people to get the ball to. The offensive line in their third year together, they're going to be formidable on the offensive side of the ball for sure. So I think that translates to Quinn having a good season. But what I wonder about is, can Quinn Ewers stay healthy? What if Quinn's playing lights out, gets hurt again, and he's gotten hurt in the last 2 seasons? He's missed 6 games almost. So five games whole, and 75% of another one. Actually, probably closer to 85% of another one. So let's just round it up. He's missed 6 games at the University of Texas in 2 years. Probability looks like if you just look at it from a probability perspective, he's going to get hurt sometime in this 2024 campaign. So what if, and I'm certainly not wishing for this, I hope Quinn stays upright, has his final season, does a great job, goes to the draft, rides off into the sunset as one of the Texas Longhorn greats, right? That's what we're hoping for. But what if, for the sake of conversation, he was playing great, got hurt, and then Arch comes in and just lights it up? And I mean, I'm not necessarily saying better than Quinn Ewers, but just like there's no, like, they don't miss a beat. Texas offense just continues to roll and roll and roll. That is a tough decision to me for Steve Sarkisian. And here's why. Not that you wouldn't think that Quinn Ewers could come back in and perform. And obviously this all depends on what type of injury might happen, could happen. There's a lot of different variables there, but let's just say he's out for 2 or 3 weeks with something. Arch comes in, does a bang up job. He's going to have a lot of pressure. There's already people in the Texas fan base that are clamoring for Arch. And I get it, I guess. I mean, actually, I don't get it. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. There's a saying at the University of Texas that the backup quarterback is the most popular player on the team, and that is almost exclusively true. But there's a lot of guys that are super excited about Arch, and they want to see him out on the field. And if that guy gets out on the field and does some great things in the possible absence of Quinn Ewers, there's going to be a ton of pressure to maintain that, to keep that going. And I think depending on when it happens and the circumstances around it, it could even be greater. Like, what if Texas is undefeated headed into the OU game, but let's say Ewers gets hurt right before the Oklahoma game. Can't play the Oklahoma game, can't play the Georgia game. And let's say Arch comes in and wins both of those games and just shreds it up in the process. I would not want to have to make that decision, because I think if you just look at it on the surface, you would say, well, Quinn's our guy. He got hurt. He missed a couple games. Thank you, Arch, for coming in, doing great things. But we're going to go back with Quinn because Quinn's the starter. That's what I feel like on the surface. But then I also know that I think there is going to be this enormous pressure in that scenario. Specifically, there would be enormous pressure on Steve Sarkisian to just make that move. And I think he's been around coaching staffs that would make that kind. I mean, I think was not he in Alabama when they basically told Jalen Hurts, you got to go, and here comes Tua? I think he was. I might be wrong. That might have been one of the years he was over at Atlanta. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting thing, and I think that's the real sort of concern if you're Quinn Ewers. And I'm not even saying it's a real concern. I'm just saying if we're going to live in this world where Quinn needs to be concerned about Arch Manning, it's not in the course of normal events, I'm going to play bad and Arch is going to get a chance. He's going to do so well that I'm not going to be the starting quarterback. I don't think that's a legitimate concern, because I just don't think – I think Quinn's going to play really good this year. So, but what could happen, he could get hurt. And then, man, that's going to – just depending on what happens and what circumstances we're talking about, that could be a crazy discussion. I guarantee you one thing. The University of Texas fan base will be completely divided in that particular scenario over what should be done. It'll get pretty ugly, as a lot of times these Texas quarterback controversies get. Texas baseball, man. Texas baseball. Goodness gracious. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with this team. So they're 28-18. It's the first time all season they've been 10 games over 500. They're 13-8 in the Big 12, which is good enough for third right now. Let's talk about how they got there. OU series last weekend. They go up to Norman. First time in 6 years they've played in Norman. And they dropped game one 9-4. They out-hit the Sooners, but they committed 5 errors in that game. And I think 4 of them were in one inning. I mean, it was just an absolute shit show listening to that game on the radio. Max Grubbs had his best, or actually not his best start, but Max Grubbs, I think, was probably the best start of the weekend. He pitched for 5 innings, gave up 7 hits, 3 Ks, 1 walk, 1 wild pitch, 5 runs, 1 of them earned. And that was the best start. You could debate about the whole catalog of numbers there and say, well, maybe Boogie had a better start or maybe LBJ had a better start. But if you're looking at just innings that these guys got, he had 5, Boogie LBJ only had 3 in their starts. So to me, I think that's a win. As the longer Texas can avoid having to go to that bullpen in a series and waste arms and use up arms, I think the better they are throughout the weekend, right? And I mean, I think that's probably most teams, but especially this Texas team. They go on to win game 2, 8-6. Boogie can't go any longer than 3 innings. Flores with 2 doubles and 2 RBI. I think maybe the heroes of that game, in my opinion, Chase Loomis and Gage Bain, they come in out of the bullpen, give Texas 6 innings of work where they only give up 2 runs. So Texas evens it up on Saturday, or actually Sunday. They had the bad weather day on Saturday. Lots of tornadoes up there in Oklahoma. Hopefully those people are starting to get, dug out of that. Man, that was pretty crazy. I think I saw where one town got hit like by 3 different tornadoes. And I laugh just because I don't know what else to do. That's not a funny thing. It's tragic, but it happened. And I'm a sick-headed person, so the only thing I know how to do sometimes is laugh. That's why you get to chuckle in weird times from me. But at any rate, they don't play Saturday, and they had planned that. They said we're going to make this a doubleheader on Sunday. The weather's supposed to be so bad on Saturday, so I think they started at 1:00 or Central Time on Sunday. Texas evens it up in the first, and that was probably like the longest baseball game I think I've ever seen. They had played for, or maybe that was the second game on Sunday. Either way, one of those games was just insane. I'm pretty sure it was the first game because I remember commenting it took them almost 4 hours to play the game. 8-6 game. And then game 3, they wait 45 minutes or whatever. They start game 3. And game 3 was kind of like personified the duality of this Texas team. They scored 12 runs through 7 innings in this game. 6 home runs. They had 5 2-run home runs in the first 6 innings. Can you imagine that? 5 2-run home runs through 6 innings. And yet they only go on to win a weather-shortened rubber match game, 12-10. Again, LBJ couldn't get past the 3rd inning, or couldn't even start the 4th inning. Every time Texas punched with those big 2-run home runs, OU punched right back. My wife got so sick and tired of listening to me go, this is unbelievable. Every time they stretch it out, Oklahoma immediately reels it right back in. I mean, I think it would have been interesting to see that game go 9. I'm not sure Texas would have won it. OU fans probably think, man, we're killing the ball. We got just as good a chance to come back and win this thing as Texas does to hold on, right? Texas fans probably think, nah, man, we would have held on because we're hitting the ball really well, which is both of those things are true at the same time. But I wonder if Texas might have set the single game record for home runs. They've tied it twice in the last week at 6. I mean, they had 2 more at bats. I don't know. That would have been crazy. But the weather does what the weather does, and they had just lightning in the area is what I think it was. And they just had to call it after 7. I think they had lightning, and then there was some pretty heavy rain that came through there. And I just think they thought there was no way that they could hold on to get that thing done. And I want to say there was maybe another round like off to the west that was going to come through at some point. Either way, Texas goes up to Norman, gets an absolute must-win series win over the Oklahoma Sooners. And they're right there in striking distance. Then they got their midweek with Sam Houston. They hit 5 home runs in this one. They win this one 16-9. Another duality of this Texas team game. Charlie Hurley gives you 5 great innings. David Shaw tacks on another great inning. And then Cody Howard comes in a 15-1 baseball game and just cannot throw strikes. I mean, just can't. And I say that because I surely to God, he's not pitching around people with a 15-1 lead. I mean, mentally, that could not have been his thought process. I'm going to pitch around these guys with a 15-1 lead in the 7th inning. It couldn't have been. So the only thing I can surmise is that he just was struggling to command his pitches and just could not find the zone. This guy, in a third of an inning, and I'm not trying to bash Cody Howard. I'm just trying to talk about the Jekyll and Hyde-ness of this team. The yin and the yang of this team. In a third of an inning, Cody Howard walks 7 batters, gives up 2 hits, and allows 7 earned runs. And at this point, you know, a lot of we're all watching the game or following it on Twitter, or maybe people are listening to it. I was watching it. Everybody at this point on Twitter and you know, on the game threads, on the message boards, just having a good time. Oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden, it's 15-8. And you're like, holy shit. CJ Vogel tweets something about it being, you know, Texas is just going to go ahead and score 20 tonight. And I said, well, they might need every last one of those. And that's the truth, man. That game should have never got the way it got. And they still end up winning the game. What did we say? 16-9. And a win is a win every single time. But I think what's frustrating is in both of those games, the last 2 games, the bats have just been insane. And the pitching could not even, I mean, multiple times in that game 3, Texas stretched the lead. And multiple times in the very next half inning, Oklahoma would come right back. It's like they cannot just go in and say, and a lot of it was walks. And that is the most frustrating one of all. Walks. I mean, you beat me. But my God, you cannot just walk people like that. You put people on leadoff, you give up a bunch of leadoff walks, and they are scoring. I mean, it's almost like just baseball karma. That's just the way it goes. You start putting people on for free to lead off innings, and they're going to score a lot. So again, this team in 2 games in a row, the offense was just flat out amazing, but the pitching could not hold serve, and the pitching could not keep it reasonable. And I don't think you can look. I mean, you can say, well, it was 16-9, man. Why are you so upset? It's the 9. How many games are you gonna win giving up 9 runs, walking 7 guys in a third of an inning? How many games are you gonna do that? Like, how many times is that gonna work out for you? It's not. And it's certainly not gonna work out for you against really good competition. Way more often than not, you're gonna be on the short end of the stick on that one. So I think if you're looking at it just single game, great. Yeah, we won 16-9, but it's what's got to be concerning and should be concerning is the fact that they give up all these runs, and it's almost like when their offense is kicking ass, they're going to give up a lot of runs and make it way more interesting than it has to be. That midweek game, by the way, was the last midweek game by the Longhorn Network crew. And one of the great things, there's not been many, in my opinion, but one of the great things about the Longhorn Network has been their coverage of baseball. You can watch 35 games a year on the Longhorn Network, roughly. Games that you might not get to see otherwise. So I really hope Zeke and Zonk find a place I've enjoyed listening to them, call these games. I think not only are they like Longhorn legends and MLB guys that had long, good careers in Major League Baseball, but they're really good at their job. So I hope that both of those guys, Greg Swindell, Keith Moreland, I hope they end up finding a spot to land with ESPN to call some SEC baseball games. I want to hear those guys call some SEC baseball games. So whoever's in charge of that, please make that happen. State of the program, man, this has been an interesting topic almost every single week, and it's been so different so many times. I mean, at one point this season, I said the wheels are off. This team may not make the tournament. I said that on this show. And since then, there's been moments to completely refute that. And there have been moments that completely justify that line of thinking as well. And I think, again, that's the duality of this Texas team and the frustrating thing about this Texas team. The bats are hot. They have hit 20 home runs in the last 5 games. They got 95 on the season right now, which I'm pretty sure is good for 7th nationally. I can't remember when I checked that, if it was after the midweeks. It must have been after the midweeks, but there's been some other midweeks since then. So that could be slightly off. Top 10 in home runs in the country. They're on pace to hit 114 home runs just in the regular season if they keep up this rapid pace. And they're hitting 2.07 home runs a game. So let's just call it 2 home runs per game. Man, this team's hit 5 or more in 3 of their last 5 games. So as crazy as it sounds, 2 almost sounds normal. Then you got the Big 12 tournament, which unless they just have a complete meltdown, which again, I would not rule that out. But unless they have a complete meltdown, they've got the Big 12 tournament. And if after the Big 12 tournament, we're still talking about the chase to 128 home runs is how many the 2022 team hit. We're still talking about that. They've made it to a regional because they've bombed the ball. So what? Let's give them 2 games in the Big 12 tournament. If they make a regional, they'll play 3 games at least. That's 5 extra games. That's 10 extra home runs. That's going to put them really, really close to tying or beating that 22 teams record. So it was kind of funny, man. I don't bring this up to like bash on Hardball Harge. I just think it's funny. His reaction is what was funny. I asked him on this show a few weeks ago. I said, Harge, man, this team's knocking the ball around. Do you think they got a shot to come close to that 2022 record? And he did not hesitate. I think his exact words were, hell no. Ain't no way. And I didn't necessarily disagree with him. And again, I'm not trying to rub his nose in it or anything like that. But how crazy is it that this team is busted? They have gorilla balled their way into the conversation to chase for 128. And so I think that's pretty exciting. And I think if you're Texas, that's your key to success. And we've been saying that since the very beginning of the season. Just after watching the team for a short time, gorilla ball or bust for this team. Right now, and I don't know where this projection comes from, they're currently projected as a 3 seed in the UC Santa Barbara regional that's paired up with the Fayetteville regional. I think from a regional perspective, that's probably the teams that were also projected. And we don't know if this is going to hold true. I don't even know how people are doing projections at this point. But anyway, if that were to hold true and those other teams were to wind up in that regional, it's probably the best spot for Texas to land. And then, of course, if you make it out of that regional, You may have to go to Fayetteville for a super regional. And would that not be an event? That may be an event that I might have to try to get to be perfectly honest, just depending on other circumstances. The last time I saw Texas and Arkansas play baseball was the 2018 College World Series, and we were doing okay against those pigs. And then the skies just opened up. We had a weather delay. Obviously, both starting pitchers were burned. And those bats came alive. They had Heston Kjerstad, and who was the other guy they had? They had a couple of really good hitters on that Arkansas. That Arkansas team almost won the College World Series. They were a foul ball away from winning the College World Series, if memory serves. So a really good team. But I cannot imagine Texas having to go on the road to Fayetteville to the box. I believe that's actually the box is LSU's deal. Whatever it's called in Arkansas, whatever their place is called, man, that you might could sell that pay-per-view, honestly. That let's just hope this happens. Let's all just pray to the baseball gods that somehow Texas and Arkansas meet up in a super regional this year in baseball. Say amen. I think the pitching on this team is getting a little more consistent. It's still not a weapon. There's been some Texas teams in the past that and most of the ones that went on to win College World Series, they were so good pitching. I mean, it's ridiculous. We used to have guys, and even, up until the last couple years, there were guys on this roster that could just strike people out, like almost at will. And man, this Texas team just does not have it. And I'm not saying they don't do it. They strike some people out, but I mean, there used to be games where Texas just flat out made hitters look stupid. They just couldn't hit it. So we ain't there. Certainly not even close. And I don't think we'll get there, but I think that they're getting to the point pitching wise where they might be a little bit serviceable. Like they might, if the bats get to banging the way they've been banging these last 5 games, it's going to be tough to beat Texas. I think the pitching is getting to that point. We'll see how it goes the next 3 weekends, but I feel like I've seen some improvement. I think a lot of that has to do with Pierce finally, and I say finally, I don't mean that negatively against David Pierce. I think he finally found his rotation. And he's finally got him in the order he wants him in. And so there's been some stability from that perspective. Man, earlier this season, you didn't ever know who was going to start a game. So now he's got his 3 guys. And I think, they've had each of them have had their really good games, and each of them have kind of had some stinkers. But between the 3 of them over the weekend, it seems like for the most part, they've at least had 1 or 2 in most series, pretty good games out of the pitching staff. Last weekend was certainly not that way. But again, I still think this team has got to be a gorilla ball team. This team, to make it to the College World Series, in my opinion, is going to have to beat 128 home runs. They're going to have to win that chase, because I just think they just don't have the weapons out of the bullpen that a lot of these other teams have. And we're sitting here after we've said multiple times, man, the wheels are off, and we're going to admit it. We have said that. Hell, they may still be off. There's 3 weekends to go. We just don't know. But after all that, they got an opportunity to win the Big 12 again. They're 2 games back in 3rd place. Okie State and West Virginia are tied for 2nd. They get to play one of those this weekend. They got 3 series left to get it done. They got Oklahoma State at home. They got to go on the road to UCF. And then they're back at home for KU for the finale, the final Big 12 series in Texas history. Okie State will be a challenge. I think they're a really good ball club. I think UCF is a pretty good ball club, but I think they have some consistency issues as well. They started Big 12 play out pretty hot, and then they kind of fallen off here lately. And then KU, I don't think is, again, I'm not saying they can't win a series against Texas. For God's sake, BYU won a series against Texas. BYU is a weather thing away, I think, from sweeping Texas, possibly. So I think this weekend is super pivotal. You got Oklahoma State. You gotta win the series against them to get them out of the way, right? So to have a chance, you got to take the series against Oklahoma State, who is ranked 14th, 31-14 on the season. I went back and looked at their schedule. It's been kind of interesting. They played some really big names early. Arkansas, who they got a W against. Oregon State's another one of those sort of favorites to go to the College World Series. They posted an L against them. And they played a lot of shit teams, too. I mean, they lost the series against UCF. They lost the series to K-State. They did win the series against Oklahoma, the Bedlam series. So you kind of look at their record and who they've played, and I don't know that there's other teams that should be ahead of them, but 14 seems kind of high to me. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out this weekend. The interesting thing is, I don't know if Texas can get back in the top 25, even if they were to win this series. I mean, you got to think if they won 2 straight conference series against ranked opponents that they would figure. I mean, the record's not that bad. It's not that great, but it ain't that bad. We'll see. They play Friday night at 6:30 p.m., Saturday at 2:30 p.m., and Sunday at 1 p.m. All games on the Longhorn Network and the Longhorn Radio Network. Get on there, listen to my boy Craig Way and maybe my boy Mike Harge call a game. It's good listening. I will have to do that tomorrow, at least for a little bit, on the way back from Amarillo. Folks, what in the hell is going on? So, again, we said it at the top of the show. We have been very vocal about Colorado football the last, year and a half? Basically, ever since Deion Sanders was named the head coach, there's been lots of stuff to talk about. And so we're a sports show. We really love college football. We're going to talk about it. We've talked a lot about Colorado. We talked a lot about Coach Prime. Some of it positive, some of it not so positive. This latest sort of, I don't know. Do y'all feel like sometimes they do stuff just for clicks? I mean, I know Oregon coach said that, but I sometimes really feel like that they're doing stuff just to get clicks. I just feel like nobody is this stupid. So there has to be some sort of like ulterior motive, right? Here's the deal. Some transfer, I don't even remember his name. Some kid that was there when Coach Sanders, Coach Prime got there after his infamous, most of y'all just might as well go and get in the transfer portal because I'm bringing Louis Vuitton bags in and y'all are not that. He sticks around. And even I think he said he had a, kind of a personal conversation with Deion Sanders. Or maybe Deion Sanders said it afterwards in this whole debacle, but it sounds like the story was he was already there. Coach Sanders encouraged him to move on because he wasn't going to play. He didn't. And then he ultimately did, right? And I think he was a freshman All-American at Austin Peay. I think in his mind, he wanted to stay through spring, see what he could do, see if he could, make a dent in this whole Louis Vuitton thing. So I don't know if it was part of an interview or what the context was, but sort of that gets out on the internet that that Coach Prime, not only did he just kind of really prematurely tell him, you're not going to play here, so you should go somewhere else, but he also just kind of ignored the kid, like put the kid on ice is basically what it seemed like during spring football. Said Deion didn't even try to get to know me, nothing like that. So that comes out, and then Coach Prime's son, Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback at Colorado, the one that nobody could possibly beat. So if you're a quarterback, just go. And I wish I was making that up, but that's what he told all the other quarterbacks. He sees it and sort of claps back, saying that he doesn't even know who this guy was. He must have been really mid. And then some other Colorado players kind of joined in on it. And then some people, started responding to that because that's pretty. I mean, we're not in junior high anymore, man. And I know there's these other guys out there that say college football. There's one in particular. I don't even know who he is. He went on this rant, posted a video on Twitter that college football wasn't a daycare, and everybody should stop trying to blow this out of proportion and all this shit. And man, I get that point. It is not a daycare. It's a huge business. In most cases, these guys are grown ass men. And so we don't need to baby them. We don't need to hold their hands. But I think there's a difference between doing that and then just letting people have their dignity and not openly going out and clowning on people. And that's what this turned into, was just this open clowning of this kid. And then some people sort of clap back at Shedeur, giving him shit. And then so Deion, because Deion's the head coach. Watching Deion Sanders argue with football fans earlier this week on Twitter gave me the same sort of feeling that I used to get when I would see Donald Trump tweeting all the time. Like, dude, you're the president of the United States. How the hell do you have time to tweet? How the hell does Deion Sanders have time to get in arguments with people on Twitter? It's strange as shit. I mean, we have devolved so much as a society that we now have Division I head coaches getting on Twitter and arguing with people. So anyway, someone said something crazy to Shedeur. Prime jumps in and says, "Oh, he's going to be a top 5 pick." Starts mocking this kid, the original kid, the one that said what he said. And again, I don't know the context. So he is mocking this kid openly, multiple times. So you have your starting quarterback mocking a kid for not being there anymore. Then you got the head coach doing the same exact shit, posting pictures of this kid getting hit or something. Like I can't believe it. And so obviously Twitter blows up, and most people are just kind of sick of this whole shit. They're sick of prime time. They're sick of the Shedeur bullshit. They're sick of the whole Sanders family, honestly. And honestly, if you're a decent and normal human being and you're not sick of their shit, then you're not a decent and normal human being. That's just the cult is strong with this deal. And so a few cultists get out there and start, "Oh, what's the problem? Oh, y'all just, the same stupid ass arguments that we've been hearing for a year and a half about, from towards anybody that disagrees with something that happened there." The problem is y'all were fucking 4-8 last year. Y'all aren't good. Y'all don't have any room to be mocking anybody. Not a single football player at the University of Colorado, or Colorado University, however you say it, not a single player there has any room to mock anybody else. Y'all were fucking terrible. Embarrassingly terrible. The one good team y'all played absolutely ran through you like a hot knife through butter. I mean, that shit looked like a junior high team playing a varsity high school team. It was that bad. And not only were you 4-8 last year, but you talked shit the entire time like you weren't 4-8. Then they flipped 30% of their roster over again. And I say again, just saying 2 times in the offseason now under Deion Sanders, there's been a massive flip of players. You know why? Because Prime can't go and recruit. He not only can he not, he just won't. The dude is sitting in his office arguing with people on Twitter. If you're the AD at Colorado, like, are you not seeing all this go down? And from the just the perspective of behavior, not saying to yourself, this is bad. I can't allow this. The guys that are the face of your program are on Twitter mocking people and arguing with people. But then the other side of it is he's got a job to do. He's the head coach. How in the hell does he have time to do any of this shit? Why is he not going and recruiting people? And I know Deion's going to say, and the coaches are going to say, well, there's so many players that want to play for Deion, he doesn't even have to go recruit. But we saw how that worked for him last year. Yeah, he had a full roster of dudes that got their asses taxed. And I'll just be honest, I don't think it's going to be any better this year. I mean, they might win an extra game because they're playing a Division I AA school to start the season off. They got no culture. If you're a culture type of person, and you would think an AD would be, you cannot be happy about what is happening right now with that Colorado football program in terms of culture. Like, who in their right mind would send their son to go play for that dude? I mean, just given the behavior, I don't care anything about his past. I don't care that he's flashy. That's not the problem. The problem is he is clearly just there to see his sons out, and then he's done. He does not give a damn about Colorado football. He doesn't give a damn about the University of Colorado. He's there for himself and his 2 boys, and maybe Travis Hunter. And it's just so evident by the way he talks about the kids that are no longer there. So why would you send your kid to go play for that? Why would you even, like, there is no way I would send my kid to play for that guy. None. And I think, and again, I'm not there, man. Maybe there's something I'm missing. All I can judge that situation on is what we see out in the public. And what we see out in the public is not good, folks. I think when all the dust settles and Coach Prime is no longer at Colorado, man, that pro, and I know it was in a bad way when they hired him, but it is going to be just a pile of dust. It's going to ultimately be too much of this primetime shit and not enough success. And the bad part is this primetime nonsense. And I'm not talking about the person. I'm talking about the attitude, his culture. It's a cancer. It is an absolute cancer. I don't know why people on the inside can't see it. They've got to be able to see it. There's no way they can't see that happening, like right in front of them. So either they can't, or they're just turning their turning a blind eye. I don't know. That's the show today. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for watching. We're going to talk about Texas baseball next week. See if they can't put another little notch in the belt on the Big 12 you-know-what tour on the way out. See if they can't get those Okie State Cowboys. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Please follow and subscribe. Won't cost you guys a thing. We appreciate the support. Email me questions. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good weekend. Get hooked.